Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Buried to the Brim by Jenn McKinlay, narrated by Karyn O'Brien. Chapter 1. If I held my left hand just so, I could see the diamonds catch and scatter the light, even the dreary February light in London, into a million tiny rainbows. I, Scarlett Parker, was engaged to be married. My fiance, Harrison Wentworth, proposed to me a few months ago when we were visiting my parents in Connecticut, and I don't think my feet have touched terra firma ever since. And it's not just because of my spectacular ring, although this cushion-cut Harry Winston did add a little something to the proposal, but rather because after dating all the wrong men, I finally found Mr. Right. I held my hand over my heart and sighed. "She's doing it again," Fee said. She was standing behind the counter in the middle of the hat shop. "It's like a trance," Viv said, "or perhaps a fit. It'll pass." I turned away from the front window, where I'd been arranging a new display of spring hats before I got distracted by my ring, and glanced at my cousin, Vivian Tremont, and her assistant, Fiona, Fee, Belton. They were both looking at me as if they were convinced I'd lost my mind. Viv's blue eyes, the only feature we shared, were narrowed and her lips pursed. Her long blonde curls were piled on top of her head in a messy bun, and she was dressed for warmth in a long pale green tunic sweater over charcoal tights and black boots. If I didn't love her so much, I'd loathe her for being so fairy-tale princess pretty. But I did love her. She was the closest thing I had to a sister, and when my life imploded a few years ago, she was the one who sent for me, insisting I take my place as her partner in the hat shop that our grandmother Mim had bequeathed to us. Fee, Viv's assistant, had her head tipped to the side. Her chin-length corkscrew curls, highlighted with vibrant streaks of purple, bounced as she nodded in agreement with Viv's assessment. A beautiful woman, Fee was tall and lithe, with dark eyes and skin, and cheekbones you could slice cucumbers on. She'd been Viv's millinery apprentice while in fashion school, but had become a full-time employee once she graduated. It was a good thing I adored her, too, because honestly, hanging out with these two knockouts could damage even the most well-adjusted girl's self-esteem. Despite a rocky start, I'd been in London for almost 3 years, and I couldn't imagine spending my days anywhere but our quaint little hat shop, Mim's Whims, on Portobello Road in Notting Hill. Being an American, the hat thing had always been a curiosity for me. Even when I came over to stay with Mim during my school holidays, I never quite understood the passion for hats that exists in Britain. Mim told me that wearing a hat is woven into the social fabric of being British. For the royal family in particular, protocol dictates that they wear hats to all royal occasions. Royal and upper-class women rarely showed their hair in public before the 1950s, Mim explained, and so the hat remains relevant in British society. Personally, even though I love the beautiful hats Viv and Fee create, I still don't quite get it. Although, I have to admit, there is no better cure for a bad hair day than one of Viv's exceptional designs. "I'm not having a fit," I protested. I tossed my straight red hair over my shoulder in my most diva manner and tipped my nose up in the air. "I'm just happy. Can't a girl be happy without everyone thinking she's bonkers?" Viv and Fee exchanged a glance, and then they broke into matching grins. "We're just teasing you, yeah?" Fee said. Her nose ring caught the light as she turned her head to the side. She jerked her chin in the direction of the front door and said, "And if I'm not mistaken, here comes the reason you're so daft." I whirled around, and my heart gave a flutter at the sight of the tall man with wavy brown hair and bright green eyes who was approaching our shop. Harry. I was so delighted to see my fiance, I didn't realize he had someone with him until Viv let out a huff of disgust. "Is that a dog?" she cried. "Is he bringing it into our shop?" Harry grinned at me as he pulled open the door, and it took all of my brain power to glance away from him and take in the petite woman and the adorable corgi who had entered the shop beside him. "Yes, that's definitely a dog," Fee said. "Oh, look, it's wearing galoshes and a mac." I glanced down. It was. As giddy as I was about seeing Harry, the sight of the stubby-legged canine in a raincoat about did me in. Totes adorbs! I hurried from the window and dropped to the floor beside the pup. "Well, aren't you just the cutest thing?" I asked. I held out my hand so we could become acquainted, and a cold, wet nose nuzzled my fingers. "She used to greet me like that," Harry said. His tone was dry, and when I glanced up, he was smiling ruefully at the woman beside him. "By letting you sniff her hand?" the woman asked. She grinned. "That's odd. Is that a new thing you young kids do?" Harry laughed. "You're a regular card, Aunt Betty." Aunt Betty. I'd heard stories about her from Harry's parents, mostly his father, since Betty was his little sister. Everyone doted on Aunt Betty. She was a petite woman, but very stylish in a later-year Audrey Hepburn sort of way, with her long burgundy wool coat, a jaunty navy and white polka-dot scarf, and large sunglasses. Harry gave her a one-armed hug. The obvious affection between them made me smile. "Aunt Betty, may I introduce you to my friends, Vivian Tremont and Fiona Felton?" He gestured to Viv and Fee behind the counter, and then said, "And this is my beautiful fiancée, Scarlett Parker. Ginger, this is my absolute favorite aunt in the whole wide world, Betty Wentworth." "Delightful to meet you," I said. I stood up and shook her gloved hand. Aunt Betty gave Harry a side-eye. "I'm your only aunt." "That doesn't make it not true," he said. She laughed and swatted his arm. "And who is your handsome companion?" I asked. "She's not talking about me," Harry said. He sounded aggrieved. "Well, you can't honestly expect to compete with my Freddy now, can you, dear?" Aunt Betty asked Harrison. "I mean, look at his bum. It's shaped like a heart." A laugh came out my nose. I took a discreet peek at Freddy's behind, underneath the bright yellow raincoat. Yep, definitely in the shape of a fuzzy heart. "Aw!" I felt Harry's gaze upon me and tried to save myself. "Let me clarify to salvage your self-esteem." I winked at him and turned to Betty. "Who is your handsome four-legged companion?" Aunt Betty smiled and turned to Harry. "I like her." "Everyone does," Harry said. "His full name is Freddy Darling Wentworth, and he is handsome, isn't he?" Aunt Betty asked. "I mean, just look at him, all honey-colored, with ears and a good snout. He's a perfect specimen of a corgi. He's descended from the same line as the Queen's dogs, you know." "Is he?" Fee asked. She came out from behind the counter and knelt in front of Freddy. A cold, wet nose poked out from under the large yellow rain hat, and Freddy licked her fingers. "Yes, he's a Pembroke Welsh corgi from the same lineage as the Queen's beloved Susan," Aunt Betty said. "That's incredible," I said. "It's like having royalty in the shop. Last time we were so graced was when the Duchess of Sussex and the Duchess of Cambridge came for wedding hats." "You did not just compare a dog to the royals," Viv said. She looked utterly appalled. Viv is a monarchist, and the royal family is sacrosanct, probably because they buy a lot of her hats. Not that I'm saying her loyalty could be bought, But there was definitely a fiscal relationship there, if you know what I...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?